Welcome, everyone, to Lesson 4, Clinical Study Design and Ethical Considerations. I am Jeet Ghosh, your master trainer, and in today's session, we will take a deep dive into the fundamental principles of clinical study design, the different types of research methodologies, and the ethical considerations that ensure the integrity and safety of clinical research. Clinical studies form the backbone of modern medicine. Every new drug, treatment, or medical device undergoes rigorous testing through well-designed research before being approved for use. However, designing these studies requires careful planning and adherence to strict ethical standards. Throughout this lesson, we will explore the various types of study designs used in clinical research, understand how they contribute to scientific advancement, and discuss the importance of ethical guidelines in protecting human subjects. So, let's begin. Section 1. Before we move forward, let's clearly define the learning objectives for this session. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to understand the concept and importance of clinical study design, identify different types of clinical research methodologies, including observational and experimental studies, gain insight into the ethical considerations involved in clinical research, familiarize yourself with regulatory guidelines that ensure ethical research practices. Recognize how ethical compliance impacts research validity, credibility, and acceptance in the scientific community. By focusing on these objectives, you will develop a strong foundation in clinical study design and the ethical responsibilities that researchers must uphold. Section 2. Clinical study design is the structured framework that researchers use to investigate medical interventions, drugs, and treatment outcomes. The goal is to generate reliable, reproducible, and unbiased results that contribute to medical knowledge. Imagine a scenario where a new cancer drug is developed. Without a proper study design, researchers wouldn't be able to determine whether the drug is safe, effective, or better than existing treatments. Clinical research provides this structured approach, ensuring that findings are scientifically valid and ethically sound. Key considerations in study design include: the research question, what are we trying to find out? The population, who will participate in the study? The methodology, how will the study be conducted? The data analysis plan, how will the results be interpreted? Every study design has strengths and limitations, which is why careful planning is necessary to obtain meaningful conclusions. Section 3. There are three broad categories of clinical study designs. Observational studies, researchers observe participants without intervening. These studies help identify associations between variables. Experimental studies, researchers actively intervene to test a hypothesis, such as in drug trials. Mixed method studies, a combination of observational and experimental approaches to provide a more comprehensive understanding. Selecting the right study design depends on the nature of the research question, ethical considerations, and available resources. Section 4. Observational studies play a crucial role in epidemiology and public health research. These studies help identify risk factors, disease patterns, and treatment outcomes in real-world settings. There are three main types of observational studies. Cohort study. This study follows a group of people over time to examine the relationship between risk factors and disease development. For example, a cohort study might follow smokers and non-smokers for 20 years to determine the likelihood of developing lung cancer. Case control study. This type of study compares individuals with a disease, cases, to those without it, controls, to identify potential causes. It is particularly useful for rare diseases. Cross-sectional study. This method examines a population at a single point in time to assess the prevalence of a disease or condition. It is useful for public health planning and policymaking. Section 5. In contrast to observational studies, experimental studies involve active intervention by researchers. These studies are designed to establish cause and effect relationships between variables. The most rigorous type of experimental study is the randomized controlled trial, RCT, where participants are randomly assigned to different groups. This eliminates bias and ensures that the results are reliable. Other types of experimental studies include quasi-experimental studies. These lack full randomization but still assess the impact of interventions. Single-blind and double-blind studies. These methods reduce bias by keeping participants, single-blind, or both participants and researchers, double-blind, unaware of treatment assignments. Section 6. Clinical trials progress through multiple phases, each designed to answer specific questions about the safety and effectiveness of a treatment. Phase 1 involves a small number of healthy volunteers to assess safety and appropriate dosage. Phase 2 includes a larger group of patients to evaluate the drug's efficacy and side effects. Phase 3 large-scale trials compare the new treatment to standard treatments before regulatory approval. Phase 4 post-marketing surveillance monitors the long-term safety and effectiveness of the drug. Section 7. Ethical considerations in clinical research protect human participants from harm and ensure that scientific discoveries benefit society. The core ethical principles include autonomy, respecting participants' rights to make informed decisions. Beneficence, maximizing benefits while minimizing risks. Non-maleficence, avoiding unnecessary harm. Justice, ensuring fair treatment and equitable distribution of research benefits. Section 8. The informed consent process is a fundamental ethical requirement in clinical research. Participants must receive clear information about the study's purpose, risks, and benefits. Have the opportunity to ask questions. Provide voluntary, written consent before participation. This process ensures that participants are fully aware of their rights and can make informed decisions about their involvement in research. Section 9. Several international guidelines regulate clinical research to protect participants and maintain research integrity. These include Good Clinical Practice (GCP) sets quality standards for clinical trials. Declaration of Helsinki establishes ethical principles for medical research. Belmont Report defines ethical guidelines based on respect, beneficence, and justice. IC guidelines provide international regulatory standards for drug trials. Section 10. Despite ethical regulations, clinical researchers face challenges such as ensuring participant safety while advancing scientific knowledge, managing conflicts of interest, maintaining transparency in data reporting. Section 11. The Tuskegee syphilis study is one of the most infamous ethical violations in history. Conducted without informed consent, African American men with syphilis were denied treatment for decades. This case led to stricter research ethics regulations and the establishment of institutional review boards, IRBs. In conclusion, ethical compliance is essential in clinical research. Now, consider these questions. How can we prevent ethical violations in research? Why is informed consent crucial in clinical trials? Thank you for joining this session. I look forward to your thoughts and questions.